Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my mid lane tier list for climbing in lower elos. Now, a couple disclaimers. First up, if I didn't cover one of your champions that you wanted me to expand a little bit more on, for example, like mid lane Wukong or Nocturne or any of that kind of off meta shit, please let me know in the comments down below and I will give you a explanation. Now, second up, you can climb with any of these champions. It's just going to take a little bit more time, in my opinion, with the lower tiers, and they're going to be pretty difficult to climb with compared to their counterparts in the higher tiers. Please don't let me discourage you from playing any of these champions. If you enjoy them, just fucking play them, man. Who cares? It's a game after all. All right, let's start with that. First up, we're going to start with the S tier. We're going to start with the queen of climbing for people that are new to the game, Annie. She has a great team fight impact with her ult and is always a great pickup in the mid lane, especially if you struggle with CSing. She is just the queen of CSing. She can run Predator and just have great impact roaming, so she is always a great pickup if you're looking to expand your champion pool, and if you play mages, she's very easy to pick up. Second up in that S tier, a little bit more of a difficult champion to play, Vladimir is in a great spot right now, seeing a lot of pro play, high amount of AoE damage, just needs a few items to really come online, and gets after he gets a few levels, he just has such a low cooldown on everything and can just really heavily carry team fights. Next up, Aurelion Sol. He's a pretty difficult champion to master. Not too many people play him, so a lot of people don't really know how to play against him. He has a great roaming style that he can carry very hard with by really dumpstering other lanes. Is really good into just roaming into that bottom lane and just really getting your bot lane ahead. Next up, Zoe is a great assassin pickup in that S tier. She does a great amount of damage right now. She's one of the higher skill cap champions, but she has a good base effectiveness for people that are just kind of starting to pick her up. She's in a great spot, obviously. There's a bunch of pro players that are really using them in the LCK right now that just make Zoe look insane right now in the current meta. Another good pickup for carrying in the S tier is Twisted Fate, another roaming champion that can give you a really good team-wide benefit. It is a bit harder to blind pick him because he does have a good amount of counters, so you have to be careful with him. He doesn't have the safest lane, so just be a little bit wary before picking up Twisted Fate. Next up, Morgana. I think she is a great safe pick in the mid lane. She can carry very hard with her catches and people not respecting your range, especially in the lower tiers. She has great wave clear if you are leveling up W first, and can have a high impact in her team fights with her ult, giving multiple stuns and CC. You just need to make sure that she has a good amount of damage behind her from the other roles, because she isn't the best currently to just hard carry with damage, but she can really enable bruisers that are looking to dive on the opponents, especially with a huge high value AP black shield. She can have a great effect in team fights. And the final champion in the S tier, the best AD mid laner in my opinion right now, is Talon. His roams are a little bit superior to Zed's. He's kind of average difficulty, I'd say, to pick up and just get used to his combos. He has a high amount of kill pressure right after once he gets level 2, he has one of the high skill pressures in the game, in my opinion. Just need to make sure that you have a little bit of AP coming out of one of the other lanes. Now, out of the A tier, a very easy to execute champion that has a high amount of catch and damage and team fight potential is Veigar. I really recommend him to anyone who enjoys playing mages. He's super low ban rate, so and people aren't really aware of his damage thresholds throughout the certain parts of his game, so you can really surprise people with your ult damage. Next up in the A tier lane is that Vel'koz. He's a pretty decent champion, I would say, right now. He has a lot of good long range poke. He can play pretty safe from long distances, and he just has a great team fight effect. That's kind of an ongoing theme. Anyone with a really high impact team fight ult can carry games very easily. Next up, in that A tier, she has seen a little bit of a swap over to the jungle, but I still think she is a great mid laner. She doesn't have the same amount of wave clear that she once did, but her roaming can still carry games pretty hard. She is just very difficult to play as her skill shots are very unique to her kit. Another great A tier champion is Karthus. A little bit more difficult to hit because you're so skill shot reliant for your damage. He has a great team fight impact ult. He can really affect everyone with his global, so that's another really big part of Karthus' kit. He's relatively safe in lane, but he does have a few counters, so make sure you aren't just blind picking him, as he can get dumpstered by a few different champions. Next up in that A tier is Cassiopeia. She's in a great spot right now. Even seen some play in pro play with playing it in the ADC lane. She's a bit harder to execute, but she can do just a massive amount of damage and work in team fights. Another good champion you can run in the mid lane. You usually see him in support or ADC, but he can be running in the mid lane. He has a great team fight effect. Another big part of my tier list, and what I weigh really heavily is just being able to do a lot of damage in team fights and carry that. Next up in the A tier list, we have Zillion. Zillion is great with this current meta because there are a lot of bruisers that are diving in, and your ult just has so much utility in those kind of fights, especially if you have one really strong bruiser that got a couple kills. He is just great with enabling them with reses and speed ups. Next up, Zed is really good in this current meta because people aren't going to have too many defensives because the games are ending pretty short. He is a little bit harder to execute, in my opinion, than Talon. So just be wary. You should have a couple games on him in norms and a couple games in rank before you really need to start expecting to be a carry with Zed. Next up, a little bit easier of a easier champion to execute is Heimerdinger. He has great lane control. He can push down towers really quickly, which is great for champions in this current quick meta. He's seeing pro play as well. He's just a really high impact ult if you are using the correct one in the correct situation. And finally, in that A tier, we have Swain. A little bit average difficulty, unique skill shots. Can really carry heavily in the early and mid game with his high impact ult. And nothing much else to say. Everyone knows Swain. And next up in the B tier list, these champions are probably not as good as their other counterparts, but they can carry very well still. Ziggs, another high impact ult in the team fights. He needs a few more items though to really come online and do a lot of poke damage. He is great in siege comps, and if they don't have a lot of wave clear, and if they don't have a lot of siege into you, Ziggs is a great defensive tool. He's a great offensive tool as well. He can just be vulnerable to a couple picks, so you have to be careful about that. Now, next up in that B tier list, Victor. It takes him a while to come online with his Hextech core build, so that's why I rated him a bit lower. It just takes him a while to get online and get a couple kills and get rolling compared to some of the other mages. Next up, Xerath. Very good poke, very good into team fights that are looking to fight front to back, where you don't have much dive pressure on yourself, where you can just throw your damage over their tanks and into their squishies. That's where Xerath really can thrive. Next up in that B tier list, we have Syndra. She is in a decent spot right now. She spikes in the mid game, which is pretty good. She just is very susceptible to a lot of divers right now, and that's why I didn't put her any higher, just because things like Aurelia and things like, I don't know, like Camille and just a lot of things in the current meta right now can really kill Syndra quickly in team fights. Next up is Lissandra. She's starting to see a little bit more play, especially in pro play. She has a good high impact ult and a lot of AoE damage. She comes on line pretty early, but just she doesn't snowball as hard as some of the other people in the higher tier list. Next up, we have Fizz. Now, some people might expect me to put that a little bit higher, but Fizz, you really have to be good with roaming and snowballing and taking effect for that snowballing. And this tier list is for people that are looking to climb. So you're generally not going to be smurfing. You're going to be playing it with people with similar skill. And it's hard to take advantage of people that you are of an equal skill to. So that's why I didn't rank them any higher. Diana, another similar playstyle where you want to be roaming quite a bit. A little bit easier to execute than Fizz, in my opinion. She just is in a kind of a rough spot where she can get poked out in lane and really struggles before that level 6. So she isn't that great with helping secure the Scuttle Crabs, which is a big part of this meta. And next up in the B tier list, we have Ahri. She's in a decent spot right now. Not as much damage as some of the other people. Just kind of an average, good, safe pick. She doesn't have as much team fight damage as the other people. She's good in small scrimmages. So just be wary, as you're not going to be able to carry as hard in team fights as some of the other champions. Next up, Akali's in a decent spot right now. She is an assassin. She is going to get a rework soon, so I almost didn't put her on this list just because she isn't it's not really that important right now. She does do very well if you are a one-trick of her. She can just carry games super hard, but you do have to put a good amount of time into her. That's why I didn't put her higher on the tier list. Next up is Lux. Very easy to execute. You just need to be good with skill shots, great at carrying team fights by damaging squishies behind their tanks. She's just a pretty good pick. I just really don't pick her blind because she does have a couple counter matchups. And finally, the C tier list. These are some champions I would never really recommend anyone to pick up right now. That's not to say that they can't climb, but it's just going to be a little bit harder than some of the champions above them. So, in the first up, we have Malzahar. He's just gotten so many nerfs. His Voidlings just aren't as quick as they used to be in chasing people down. They're leashed. He is very easy to execute, though. He's a decently safe pick. He can wave clear pretty quickly, but he's just not going to have the same impact as a lot of other people. If you are very good at roaming and you are very good with flash ults, he can have a good amount of effectiveness. Next up, we have Rise. Now, I would not recommend anyone pick up Rise. I think he's one of the lowest win rate champions right now. You really have to be an amazing player to make Rise work. You have to be very good with micro and, I wouldn't pick up Rise in this current meta. Next up is Orianna. She is a decent mage in the mid lane, but the reason why she is in the C tier list, in my opinion, is she just takes a couple items. She's just so slow to actually start carrying games where other champions are going to be able to start killing people a lot quicker than the Orianna. Next up is Anivia, another pretty hard scaling champion and just not good in a quick meta. Decent wave clear, safe pick. If you know the game isn't going to end very quickly, you can pick her up, but I would stay away from Anivia if I were you. Next up is Azir, probably the lowest in this current meta. I really wouldn't recommend anyone picking it up unless you have 200 games in him. You're a one trick. He can perform pretty well. But he's just one of the hardest champions to pick up right now, and there isn't as much payoff as compared to the other champions. And finally, in that C tier list is Corki, really in a rough spot right now. He's gotten a couple nerfs. He takes a while to come online as well. He doesn't perform that well. He does have a good power spike on Triforce, but he is very susceptible to a lot of the divers in the current meta, and just not a great pick right now. Just don't pick up Corki unless if you're a one trick and you have a shitload of games played on him and you know how to use the package well and you know how to use your autos correctly. He can be a decent pick. All right, and last up, we have Yasuo. If you don't have 100 games played on Yasuo, don't play him. If you're looking to just climb right now, don't play Yasuo. He's in a good spot right now for people that have a good amount of experience on him, but he can be a very feast or famine champion, and then that's not really that good for climbing. You want to have a consistent champion that can perform to a similar level every single game. Again, it's just, he could be an S tier champion right now or an A tier champion right now, but if you're in gold, silver, or bronze, just stay away from him. You can have so much more effect on other champions. And that will wrap up. That was a pretty long video of me just talking straight. But if you guys have any feedback or critique, or if you think one champion it was severely just shit tiered by me and just put in C tier when you think it's an S tier, let me know down below. I'm always open to feedback and critique. And if you enjoyed this type of video style, please let me know in the comments down below, as it is my first tier list. And as always, guys, take it easy.